What is going on, y'all? We are here today with my official first time March Madness bracket that we were going to be doing. I have filled out a bracket, as you can see. It's only about an hour after the brackets drop. I have filled out a bracket for my phone for one of my friend groups, but we are going to do a completely separate bracket for here, and we're going to make a couple different brackets here on the channel each day leading up into March Madness. We're going to have some odds, a coin flip one. We're going to try to do a couple cool things here when it comes to March Madness. But this is going to be my serious one. There's going to be two serious ones. There's going to be this one, and then the very last one will be the day before March Madness officially gets started. But here we go. UConn versus Stetson. UConn coming in as the number one seed. We are going to give it to UConn. Sorry, Stetson. It's not going to happen. You can look at Stetson. It doesn't really matter. Pretty good season for him. This kid, 20 points a game, but this team right here, UConn, they're going to be a problem for many teams. They're going to be a problem for many, many teams. Then we get to FAU versus Northwestern. This one I do want to take a little bit of a gander at. They still got kind of some of those guys that were there last year in that deep run that they had. John L. Davis was there. Golden was there. Not the team necessarily, not the season that they were necessarily hoping for. Pretty high ranked coming into the season. But then on the other side of things, you got this kid Boo Buie, who I think is one of those guys that is kind of primed for a tournament run. And with that being said, I'm going to go Northwestern. I've gone Northwestern, and the other bracket I made also, but that one obviously wasn't filmed. Then we're going to go to San Diego State versus UAB. San Diego State, I think this team, obviously they're coming from the Final Four last season. One of these teams, because this East is stacked, they have three of the four teams that were in the Final Four last season. So somebody's not going to make it that far. Actually, two of them aren't going to make it that far. They're going to, at best, be an Elite Eight team, I believe. But you look at San Diego State, they got some guys that can score the ball. UAB, they're one of those teams. I think they're well spread out. You look at UAB, recent, or well, some of these, they've played some solid teams. I don't necessarily love UAB. They can score, which is good. But San Diego State can kind of hold that defense a little bit. So obviously, I'm going to take San Diego State here. Auburn versus Yale, a little bit of an upset alert potentially. I don't think it's going to happen though. I don't think it's going to happen. This kid had a pretty good tournament. Jalen Williams, pretty solid. Auburn clicking right now. Yale, I mean, they just won their conference tournament also. But Yale, they have an uphill battle. I'm going with Auburn in that one. Then we go to BYU versus DeQuince. I'm not necessarily sure if I'm pronouncing that right. All I know is this team is a team that should be taken kind of seriously because they're a pretty good team from what I understand. BYU, also a really good team, one of the top teams in the net rankings. Coming in as a 6 seed is a little bit ridiculous because I saw them as high as a 3 seed in some of these people's that release the bracket. The early brackets, I kind of saw them kind of flirting around that 3 to 4 range, and they're coming in as a 6, which is kind of shocking. I'm kind of not expected. I mean, you look at this: Iowa State, good team, beat them by 15. Baylor, good team, beat them by 7. Kansas, good team, beat them by 8. They got some good wins. TCU's been able to upset some teams. Iowa State, again, they played close. I mean, obviously they have a couple losses, and they're the Baylors, the Texas Techs, the Iowa States. They're an up and down team, it kind of seems, but they are a really good team, and I'm going with BYU. I would love to say the Quince is going to win because that means Illinois' chance to get to the Sweet 16 might be a little bit better, but I don't necessarily think that's the case. Illinois, we look at Terrence Shannon coming off a great Big Ten tournament. He had 102 points through 3 games. I believe that amounts to 34 points per game. He had a 40-point game. He had, I believe, a 34-point game today or something like that. And then Illinois got the job done. They're the Big Ten champions. Going up against Morehead State, Riley Minix, somebody that you're going to have to look out for. The part that scares me here is offense has been good for Illinois. The offense has been real good for Illinois. You look at it, one of the best high-scoring offenses in the country, 84 points a game. This number right here, though, the opponents, the defensive side, they give up a lot of points. They give up over 70 points a game. This is a team that can score over 70. I do expect this game to be played high into the 70s, the 80s even. Morehead State, though, maybe a little bit better defensively. I know the BPI ranking has Illinois higher than Morehead State, but Morehead State could be a slippery slope for my Illini. But I am going to give us the victory there in round one. Then we get to Washington State going up against Drake. I want you guys to know about one man in particular, and it's this kid right here, Miles Rice, freshman point guard. Kind of had a little bit of a shaky ending to his Pac-12 tournament. I think he probably would have won it a little bit better. He had some mistakes there, some freshman mistakes, but I think this kid, if Washington State's going to start winning some games here in March, this is going to be a focal point of that offense. This is going to be one of those kids that they're going to rely on heavily. Isaac Jones, also another very good player. Kind of not nearly the same amount of mistakes as Miles Rice had in that Pac-12 game against Colorado, but Miles Rice is one of those players that you kind of live with the lows because the highs are extremely high. And then you get to Drake. They got Tucker DeVries, one of the best scorers in the tournament, 22 points a game almost. Very good player there out of Drake. Could be a slippery team, but I'm still going to go with Washington. So we're kind of chalking it up a little. We're kind of chalking it up a little in this first bracket outside of Northwestern. I know you might be looking, that's not a great decision. It's not a lot of chalk. I understand that. This bracket, to me, feels a little chalky. I think if there's going to be a chalky side of the bracket, it's this one. Iowa State versus South Dakota State. You look at the same thing. South Dakota State, they got some guys out here that can put the ball in the basket. But this Iowa State team, I'm going to be honest, I could see them making a deep run. I'm not necessarily super excited about them playing Illinois in probably the Sweet 16 if they both make it there. But Iowa State's a team that I think could make it there. You look at Iowa State, pretty good statistics there. So they're starting to give you some statistics too. One of the better defenses, 61.3 points per game. They're winning by 14 points a game. San Diego State, they're going to want to try to get out. They're going to try to get fast. They're going to try to have to speed up this Iowa State defense. And if they're able to do it, maybe South Dakota State wins. But I'm going to go the safe route and take Iowa State. So then we are going to move over to the South, where we get Longwood versus Houston. Two teams that are pretty, let's be honest, it's not the most favorable of matchups. You're not having one of those low seeds that just won their conference tournament and had a really good year, but they're not really getting respected. This is a team that they're 21-13. That's not a great team necessarily. And then you got one of the best teams, if not the best team in basketball. I mean, obviously you can argue whether or not it's UConn, Houston, whomever, but I think Houston obviously is in that conversation as a one seed. It's proven that they're in that conversation, but I think Houston has a really good case. You got Jamal Sheed, a returning guy. You got LJ Cryer. He's a veteran. I believe he played at Baylor. And then you look over here too, and then they got a fire alarm going on next door. That's fun. At the apartment next door, I could hear it. Not the apartment next door, but the apartment complex across the street. But Longwood, you look at guys, Wallen Napier, you're looking at Michael Christmas. There's some guys there that can get some points, but you're going to come down here, two losses, two of them. It ain't happening back-to-back years. Very good defense, very, very good defense. Kind of a decent defense there from Longwood, but ultimately I got Houston winning the game. I don't think we're getting more upsets. Nebraska versus Texas A&M. This is a game I'm excited for. You got Wade Taylor, really good player. You got Kasai Tominaga. Not necessarily sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but this kid, he can hoop. He was having a good Big Ten tournament. I was kind of scared of him against Illinois. He's a guy that can get going, and he can start torching you. Bryce Williams, he's another guy that you got to be careful for on that Nebraska team. But like you can see, they can get up there. They can start scoring a little bit. They're pretty much similar defenses. They're right back and back on the BPI rankings. This is going to be a battle. Nebraska versus A&M is going to be a battle, and I'm giving it to Nebraska. Give me Nebraska and Tominaga coming out of that game. Wisconsin versus James Madison. This is the first time that I've really contemplated going with the upset so far. This Wisconsin team's really good. That's the one thing I'm hanging out my head on. This team took Illinois to the limit. They just beat Purdue. I don't. Yeah, you are gonna see it. They just beat Purdue. They You're not gonna see it is right here actually. They barely lost to Illinois. They have some good losses. Purdue, Illinois, Arizona. It's a good Washington or a good Wisconsin team. It's a good Wisconsin team. Then you get to JMU. They beat Michigan State. They beat Kent State. 2 losses there to App State, but another tournament team in Akron they beat. Another team in Arkansas State they beat. They're not a bad team. JMU could pick it up. They could pick it up, but I don't know if they will. I don't know if they will. They're a fast going offense. They're about similar defensively. I kind of think Wisconsin's clicking at the right time. But you know what? We haven't done much upsets going on yet so far. James, Madison, Dukes, you guys are the first upset. Wisconsin is getting knocked out. Let's go that way. AJ Storr, I'm sorry. I really do like him. Hopefully he does transfer to Illinois. I'm just throwing it out there. I hope he transfers to Illinois. But we will see what happens in that game. I think that's going to be a fun game. Duke versus Vermont. You're looking at 2 teams, pretty solid teams. Vermont had a good season. A couple 10-plus per game scores over here. Obviously, NBA draft prospect and Kyle Filipowski over there. Duke, obviously, a team that plays a lot of good teams. They're gonna have some good wins. Pretty much 2 solid defenses, 2 solid offenses, but ultimately, I think just Duke is going to end up being way too much for Vermont. It's just not a great draw in my opinion. I would love to say Vermont. I feel like Vermont's always one of those teams that I love to want to win. Like I always kind of think they're sneaky. I don't know if they're that sneaky this season, which means they're probably going to be sneaky. Texas Tech versus NC State. I'm excited for this one. You got some guys here on Texas Tech that are really good players. You got some guys here on NC State that are really good players. But this right here is my boy, DJ Burns. He was cooking. In that tournament championship. They kept feeding him. He was getting going. He had the crowd behind him. He was doing his thing. DJ Burns is a problem. He's a problem, and I'm telling you that right now. DJ Burns is going to be somebody that if you haven't seen DJ Burns, watch this game. I think he's going to get involved, and he's going to get involved early and hopefully often because he's a pretty good guy out there. You're looking at Texas Tech. They're probably got the slight advantage, similar scoring, a little bit better defensively, higher BPI ranking. But I'm going with my boy DJ Burns in the NC State Wolfpack. They're getting the job done against Texas Tech in the first round. So this is a little bit of a less chalky side of the bracket. Obviously we do have some chalk in there, but we got NC State and we got James Madison making it out. Kentucky versus Oakland. I don't really know if we need to click into this. You got Kentucky. Pretty good team. They got a lot of NBA players coming up on this team. Rob Dillingham being one. Antonio Reeves could potentially be one. Your Reed Shepherd on this team could be one. There's a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys on this team for Kentucky that are going to be pretty good down the line. High-scoring team, not a great defense. They're an okay defense. So if Oakland's going to win this game, they're going to have to get out and run. They're going to have to get out and they're going to have to play. They're going to have to outscore Kentucky because Kentucky is going to put up points. And they're going to give up points. So you're going to have to play a game in which you're outscoring them. And I don't think Oakland's going to be able to handle that kind of game. Kentucky, I'm going to go with them. Florida versus Boise or Colorado. I'm not able to preview this game, obviously, because we don't know who's winning Boise versus Colorado. But I'm going Colorado. I think they're a really good team. They got some guys on there that have been really solid. They could have won the Pac-12 last night. They didn't. If they did win the Pac-12, obviously, they would be in. They wouldn't even be playing to get in, but I think they're a team that definitely deserve to be in. I think they're a really solid team. Them and Florida is going to be a good matchup. If it is Colorado, I'm going to say Colorado. If it is Colorado and Florida, I think it's going to be a really good matchup. But ultimately, I got to give it to Florida. They're looking good lately. I like what I've seen. I'm going with Florida. Then we got Marquette versus Western Kentucky. We can We can look at this one. Cam Jones, that's my guy. I really like his game. I really like picking Marquette in March Madness. I just have a tough time doing it because Marquette has let me down a few times in March Madness. I always think Well, they could go real deep, and they never go as deep as I hope they go. Cam Jones, he's going to be one of those guys. I really like his game. He can score. Tyler Kolek will be back, so he's another one that you got to watch out for. They got Igabaro, the center down there. He's another really good player to watch out for. So Marquette's got some guys. They got some guys. Then look at Western Kentucky. They got a few guys over here that can put the ball in the basket. High scoring team, pretty defense. But I think this game kind of favors Marquette. They got the defensive advantage. They can kind of score with them. They're way better in the DPI. I'm going with Marquette. This is one of the ones that could be, if we're going to have a 2-15 upset, this is one that could be on the upset watch. But I'm ultimately going with Marquette. And then we will jump down here to the West, where we got North Carolina versus Howard or Wagner. I'm going with Howard, and North Carolina is beating them. Do I even need to explain why? I think North Carolina is very, very good this season. I think they're a team that could go very deep with some of their guys they got there. Obviously, some of those guys have been there and done that. They've had tournament runs in the past. Armando Bacot. You got R.J. Davis there. You got some guys that have that experience. And then you get Mississippi State versus Michigan State. This is going to be a good one. This is going to be an absolute fight. You got some guys here on Mississippi State that are pretty good. Tolu Smith, really good player. Josh Hubbard, pretty good player. And then you got over on the Michigan State side, you got the Tyson Walkers, you got the Malik Halls, you got guys that can get it done over there as well. Not the best year for Michigan State. Mississippi State had a solid year. But you look down here, Michigan State kind of leads the defensive battle. Mississippi State kind of leads the offensive battle. I'm going with Michigan State here. I'm going with Tyson Walker and Michigan State. I think they get it done. Tom Izzo, he's going to be a guy to if somebody's going to have a March Madness run, it could be Tom Izzo. So Tom Izzo is one of those coaches that he's been there, done that. So we could see Tom Izzo make it through to the next round. Then we get St. Mary's versus Grand Canyon. Two teams had good seasons. You're looking at two guys out here. Grant Foster can get 20. St. Mary's, Mahaney's their guy. They can do a little bit with everybody on that team for St. Mary's. They're a solid basketball team. But you look down here, way better defense for St. Mary's. A little bit better of an offense from GCU. If GCU's going to get out and win this game, I think they got to get out and they got to get firing. They got to get some big shots going. So it's tough for me to go GCU, but I'm picking them. I'm going to pick Golden State. Grand Canyon, I'm picking them. I'm going off a limb. I'm going to say Grand Canyon is one of the upsets. Then we get to Bama versus Charleston. Charleston, pretty solid year. Bama, pretty solid year. Mark Sears had a good year. And then there's some guys here on Colgate that had a pretty solid year. But what I want to look at is down here. Very good offense. Not a great defense. Pretty good defense. Or pretty good offense. Pretty good defense. Colgate could be a team that makes some noise against Alabama. But I'm going with Alabama simply because I think Alabama's a really good team. I think they can go out there and they can score the basketball. Now, if they go through some stretches where they can't score the basketball, Charleston's got a chance. But I think they're going to be able to score the basketball. Then we get Clemson versus New Mexico. The Lobos made it into March. Clemson, pretty solid year. New Mexico, pretty solid year. Jalen House, a guy that you're going to be watching out for when it comes to the tournament. Could be a name that you're kind of looking back at, and maybe if New Mexico starts to make a run, you're like, okay, that's a guy. That's one of their guys. That's one of the March Madness heroes. Jamal Mashburn. I believe he is the son of an NBA player. Could be a guy. Then you get to Clemson. They got some guys that can put the ball in the basket. Obviously, two guys scoring over 15. But you come down here, Mexico can score. They can have pretty solid defense. Clemson, they can score. They have pretty solid defense. I want to pick Clemson, but I'm going to pick New Mexico. So, like I said, that first one was very chalky. This one ain't. Then we get to Baylor versus Colgate. You got Jacoby Walter. You got Ray J. Dennis. Braden Smith. These are some guys that could not necessarily, I don't necessarily think anybody's going to light it up for like 20, 30 here. I think this is going to be a well thought out game. I think this is going to be a back and forth type of game. I think neither of these teams necessarily have a huge advantage because you look, Baylor can get out and score. Colgate, they can score a little bit, but Colgate can defend. They can defend, and that's going to be what could keep them in this ball game. But ultimately, I got to go with Baylor. I got to give it to Baylor. Just can't see Colgate doing it. I want them to do it. I don't think they're going to do it. Then this is my team right here. This is my team. I don't know if you guys know about Dayton. I don't know if you know about them, but Dayton, if you look down here, they're a solid defense. They can score a little bit. 32 in the BPI. I think if you're looking at a team that you're like, well, who might I not expect to make a run, it could be Dayton. I'm going to say that, and I'll probably look dumb if they end up losing because Gerard Lucas gets his 18 a game and Keenan Blackshear gets his 15 a game. But Dayton, there's something about them that I just think that they have a good chance this season to go make some noise, maybe make a Sweet 16 appearance. And Dayton will be getting the job done there against Nevada. Then we get to Arizona versus Long Beach State. Long Beach State, not the greatest of years, but they got in. Arizona did not win the Pac-12, but they had a great year. Caleb Love, that's one of their guys. Omar Ballo, that's one of their guys. They got a lot of guys over there that can get the ball in the basket. They got a lot of guys over there with size. They're a tough matchup, a tough draw for any team, not just Long Beach State. However, you look here, pretty good defense, to be honest. Really good offense. Long Beach State, that's not very great. You kind of either want to have a little bit better defense or maybe some higher offense. I just can't justify taking Long Beach State. I'm sorry, but it's got to be Arizona. Do I think Arizona is going to win it all? Absolutely not. I don't think that they are that great of a team. But they're going to have a chance to potentially win that game because I don't necessarily think Long Beach State has a great matchup against them. Then we got Purdue versus my Grambling State or It's going to be Grambling. It's going to be Grambling. But we're giving it to Grambling. They're in. But anyways, it's going to be Purdue. Zach Edey's I know what happened last year. It ain't happening again. It ain't going to happen again. And if it does, Purdue should never touch a 1 seed ever again. It ain't happening. If it does happen, I'd be shocked. I don't think lightning strikes twice. I think Purdue wins. Purdue, they need to have a good year here in March Madness because last year they fell round 1 to a 16 seed. Is this like a Virginia situation? I don't know. But they cannot sit there and let another 16 seed beat them. They just can't. You get to Utah State versus TCU. This is going to be an absolute fun game. You got Utah State, really good team. TCU record doesn't say they're that great, but you look at some of their TCU victories. Beat Houston, beat Baylor, played close against that Iowa State team, played close against that Kansas team. They're a team that if things are clicking, they can make some noise. And then you look at Utah State, they're going to be playing. They played some of these tournament teams, the Boise States, the ones that are fighting to get in. San Diego State, 5 seed there. They played some of those teams. These are two teams I expect this game to get pretty high in the scoring. Pretty okay. They're not great defenses. They're not bad defenses. But either way, I think this is going to be an absolute fun game. I really think this is going to be one of those games when you look back at the end of the first round, you're like, wow, that was really something special. And that's why I'm going with TCU. Give me TCU. I think that if TCU's clicking, they can beat a lot of teams. I mean, I showed you who some of those teams they beat. They beat Houston. They beat a 1 seed Houston. They're gonna have to show it for March Madness. Could they beat a Purdue? I don't know, but we'll see. Then we get to Gonzaga versus McNeese. McNeese, really good season. They flipped the switch. They were able to turn it around. I think they were one of the worst teams last year. Now they're one of the best teams in their conference. You look at Gonzaga, not a great stretch against some of these tournament teams, but they did beat a Kentucky. They did beat a St. Mary's. They've never played that McNeese team, though. McNeese, you look at them. You got not as many impressive victories. You got a UAB, pretty big win though. You beat Michigan, but Michigan wasn't very good. You don't have all those wins that necessarily you'd want. But what you do have is a guard that I think could take March Madness by storm, and that is Shahada Wells. I've heard a lot about this kid. I've heard a lot of people hype this guy up. And if it is true what that kid can bring to the team with 18 points per game, pretty solid rebounding, assisting, if he can translate that into this game against Gonzaga, I think they win. I don't think Gonzaga is that great of a team this season, and I think they're vulnerable. And if they're vulnerable, why not somebody kind of underseeded like Shahada Wells and McNeese to get the job done? Now, I heard some wild stuff on the selection show about Samford getting the job done. A core for Samford, averaging 16 a game. Hunter Dickinson and Kevin McCullough. Do you want to tell me how Samford's going to stop Kansas from doing something? You look at Kansas, not the best of years for them. Samford can get out and score. Kansas can score a little bit. Defensively, Kansas is pretty good. I just don't see how they're stopping. There's just too many weapons at Kansas for a team like Samford to beat. Somebody's going to clip that if Samford wins, and I don't even care. Congratulations for winning if you did, but I just don't really see a scenario in which they beat two guys that can put the ball in the basket like they can. Now, this one's tough for me. I want to pick Oregon. I really do. They're hot at the moment. They've had some really good games lately. They just beat Arizona. They just beat Colorado. They just beat UCLA. They're striking when the iron's hot, and they're going to have to do it between these two guys right here and Jackson Shelstad. Obviously, I watch a lot more Oregon games than some of these others, so I can speak a little bit more in depth about Oregon. And Dante, we're getting him going at the right time of the year. I think he's playing his best basketball in the Pac-12 tournament, and you got to translate that into March Madness. He's never played in March Madness, so you got to try to translate that. Jermaine Couisnard, I believe, was from South Carolina. He came from there, so this is going to be an even bigger game for him. Then you got Jackson Shelstad, a freshman, who's been doing really good, and he's going to have a lot of pressure on his shoulders in this game. And you got to South Carolina's side, you got some guys that can get the ball in the basket. Meechie Johnson, B.J. Mack. Those are two guys to watch out for when it comes to them. But what you look at with South Carolina are some of these wins that are pretty impressive. You look at a Kentucky, a Tennessee, that has some bad losses, though. They weren't able to do much against Bama. They weren't able to do much against Auburn. They did beat a Florida team that we've talked about already. Tennessee, they weren't able to win that game, but they beat a Mississippi State team that's in. But then they lost big to an Auburn team. South Carolina's had an up and down year. Not a great pull for Oregon. Not a great pull, but I think it's a doable pull. South Carolina can score. They're a solid defense. Oregon, they can score a little bit. They can defend a little bit. Not the greatest. Two teams that I think should have a pretty competitive game, but it could go south if South Carolina starts getting going. But I think Oregon's got a chance. You play through Dante. From what I was able to tell, there only looks like there's one 7-footer over there in South Carolina, which means Dante could have some big numbers. And if that's the case, Oregon is getting the job done there against South Carolina. This is one. Shout out to John Gross, former Illinois basketball coach. Akron, back in the dance. Ali, 15 a game. Enrique Freeman, about 19 a game. But Creighton, they just got guys, don't they? They got Baylor Shireman. They got Trey Alexander. They got a bunch of guys that can go in there and make some plays. They got a lot of guys down there that can make some plays. And it's scary for me. It really is scary for me to think of a team like Creighton not being a Final Four team, not being an Elite Eight team. Because look at this. Solid defense, good offense, top 10 in the BPI. This is not a good matchup for a lot of teams. And that's not the kind of matchup you want if you're Akron. I don't see how you're stopping Shireman. I don't see how you're stopping Trey Alexander. They got another big man there. I forget his name. My phone's charging. But now I need to find out his name. They got another big man there. He was there last season. Let me pull up the Creighton roster. He was there last season. He was doing pretty good last season in the tournament. And he's a guy that I thought, he may be a little bit special. Yeah, they got Kalkbrenner, Ryan Kalkbrenner. That's the guy. He's 7'1". He can get the job done. He's scoring 17 a game. He can even shoot it a little bit. Shooting about 27% from three. Not great, but he can shoot it a little bit. They just got a lot of guys on that team, man. They got a lot of guys on that Creighton team. Akron, I don't know how you answer it. I know you have a solid defense. I know you can put the ball in the basket, but Creighton, that's just a tough draw. I'm going to be honest. I don't like a matchup with Creighton for a lot of teams. It's not just Akron. Texas versus UVA or Colorado State. I got Virginia. I think they should have been in regardless. Colorado State, I'm kind of surprised they did make it, honestly. I was kind of hoping like one of those teams that everybody was waiting for, like the Indiana States of the world, were going to make it to see the guy with the goggles. I know everybody was talking about him being like Jokic. I was hoping maybe we get to see him. I don't know much about that Colorado State team, actually. I really don't. So we are going to go and, I guess, double check a little bit here with that Colorado State team. They're 24-10. No slouches. 7th in the Mountain West, though. It's not great. Anybody go crazy for them this season? They do have a couple guys. They have 4 guys scoring over 10 a game. And it looks like they're being currently led by Isaiah Stevens. Isaiah Stevens getting the job done. Shooting the ball at 44% from 3. Wow, that is really good. They got some guys shooting close to that 40 range on 3, and Isaiah Stevens is shooting above it. 7 assists per game. Isaiah Stevens, if they're going to get the job done, it's going to have to be through him. But my problem here is Virginia, they're going to play a slow pace. They're going to get out and they're going to play Virginia basketball. And that's where you're going to start to struggle because they're going to slow you down. And I got Virginia winning that game against Colorado State. But it doesn't matter because I don't think either of them beats Texas. I'm picking Texas regardless of who wins that game. So shout out to Texas getting the job done. Tennessee versus St. Peter's. Shout out to my boy Cam. He is obviously a Tennessee Bulls fan. St. Peter's, not the 15 seed you want to see after what they did a few years ago. You want to get them away from that 15 seed if you're Tennessee. But the good news is you got Dalton Connect. You got Adu. You got some guys in there at that Tennessee team that have played here before. Dalton Connect, obviously. I don't necessarily know if he has played here before. I know he transferred into Tennessee this season, and he's really been a standout, one of the best players in the country, not just at the SEC level. He's been one of the best players in the country, Dalton Connect has. They're going to go through him. So as much as I'd like to say, like maybe St. Peter's could make a run again, I don't think you're stopping Dalton Connect. I'm going to be honest. Dalton Connect can take games over like it's nothing, and I'm going to have him take that game over if it gets anywhere close for St. Peter's. All right, we're back to the front. We're going to look at UConn Northwestern. Obviously, I took my boy Boo Buie. Obviously, I'm not a Northwestern fan, but I do like Boo Buie. Obviously, I don't like him when he plays Illinois, but I do have a soft spot for Boo Buie. I think he's a solid player. But I don't see UConn losing to them. Who's stopping that big man? Who's stopping that big man at UConn? I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. I think it's Klingman or something like that. Donovan Klingman. He's really good though. I kind of want to look at his stats. We'll look at UConn's stats. Connecticut does not play on day one. Of course they would have played day one. Why would they play on day one? Yeah, Donovan Klingman, I believe is how you pronounce his name. That kid's averaging 12, 7. He's pretty good. He's averaged 2.5 blocks, almost about 2.5 blocks. But they also got like Stephon Castle just chilling there. He's might go a little under the radar, but he can pop off because he's another guy that's kind of that NBA situation where he might go NBA next year. So they got some guys there that maybe aren't top of the names on the scouting report that can impact you. UConn's going to be dangerous. They're going to be dangerous not just for Northwestern, but for everybody. Then you got Auburn versus San Diego State. I know we were talking about San Diego State here already a little bit. We were talking about maybe I'm not a huge fan of San Diego State getting the job done. They could make another run. I think this is where their run ends. I'm going with Auburn. I think Auburn's the team to knock them down. Not in love with this Illinois matchup, but I do like it a little bit. I think we do have a little bit of an advantage You look at BYU, obviously, top 17, top 20 in the BPI. They can win big games. Illinois hasn't won many big games this season. Defense for Illinois has not been great. They can score with anybody. This is going to be a game that you're expecting them to go well into the 80s, 90s. Illinois, I think if that's the kind of game you play, they win that kind of game because you got Terrence Shannon right now playing the best basketball of his life. You get Washington State versus Iowa State. Iowa State, once again, we talked about them a little bit, how this could be a team that makes a little bit of a run. They have some good wins this season. Good defense there, good offense there. Washington State, kind of a similar story, a little bit better, a little bit worse than Iowa State. But this is the kind of team that Iowa State could lose to. A little bit of a sleeper team here. I'm going Washington State and Miles Rice getting the job done. So that completes the round of 32 over there on the east, and now we're going over to the round of 32 on the south, and we got Houston versus Nebraska. Kosei Tominaga. Can he get it done? I don't know. Houston, they're going to play a slow game of basketball. That's the thing with them. I mean, you look at this. They're gonna slow you down. 57 points per game is not a lot, and they're gonna score. They can score, but you're not gonna score. They're gonna slow you down. Nebraska might struggle in that kind of game, so I got to go with Houston. I know it's chalky, but we got to go with Houston. James Madison versus Duke. Will the James Madison Dukes beat the Duke? I don't know. Kyle Filipowski, tough matchup. That's going to be somebody that somebody's going to need to find their answer to if Duke gets eliminated. But James Madison could be that team. They got some guys in there that can put the basketball in the basket. And then you're looking over here is no 4 seed have won. Number 4 seeds have won 10 of the 11 meetings with 12 seeds. The only one to win other than that was Oregon State. Interesting. But like I said, that offense, pretty good. That defense, pretty solid. James Madison Dukes, I'm going with them. I'm taking them. They're going to be my Cinderella story here a little bit. We don't know if they're going to go all the way, but they're going to start being a little bit of a, I don't know, maybe that glass slipper is starting to fit. Cinderella could be up their alley with James Madison. Then we get NC State versus Kentucky. Kind of similar situation to James Madison. I think these guys at North Carolina State are legit. I think they can get the ball in the basket. I think DJ Burns is going to be a problem. And the problem here is Kentucky is not a great matchup necessarily because they got all those guys that are NBA level players. So it's going to be an interesting one. Kentucky should win this game. They're going to score a lot. I'm going to give it to Kentucky. I kind of want to see that DJ Burns run. I really liked what I saw at him in the tournament. He was getting down there and he was playing like the big man that I like to see. He gets in the post. He hits his little spin move. Fantastic footwork. He's just a fundamentally sound player, DJ Burns is, and he gets into it. He gets the crowd into it. He gets energetic about it, and I like that kind of guy. But I think Kentucky just got a little bit too much firepower for NC State to handle. Then we got Florida versus Marquette. Could be tricky here for Marquette. Like I said, Marquette has some guys. Cam Jones, Tyler Kolek, Igabaro. They got some guys. Zion Pullen, I believe he was a first-team player over there. I believe Walter Clayton has been pretty solid for them this season. I mean, you look at Florida, they've had a couple Kentucky win, an Auburn win, some impressive wins, an Alabama win twice, an A&M win. And A&M was on the bubble. So they got some wins. Marquette, I think they're a team that's susceptible of a March Madness choke, but ultimately I think Marquette gets this game. I think Marquette gets it done. I think they get it done against Florida. Then we get down here to North Carolina versus Michigan State. I feel like this is just a traditional college basketball game right here. Two of the powerhouses. And when you think of college basketball, these are two teams that like early season, you're hyped up because they're playing each other. They're two top 10 teams. Obviously, the Michigan State team this year hasn't been that great, but this feels like a classic like NCAA matchup, like between two of like historically strong programs between North Carolina and Michigan State. R.J. Davis going at it. Armando Bacot going at it. Malik Hall, Tyson Walker. There's guys left and right in this game that I think are really good college basketball players. But ultimately, you got to go with R.J. Davis and the North Carolina Tar Heels. I think they're just a really good team. They could go all the way this year, potentially. Then we get to Alabama versus Grand Canyon. We talked about Grand Canyon kind of hopefully outpacing St. Mary's and getting the score going up and trying to play that high level, high offense kind of basketball to get to that high 80s area. Solid defense for Grand Canyon. If you're going to play shootout basketball and you're playing it with Alabama, I don't think you're winning. And I think that's the kind of game right there that they're going to play, and I don't think they're going to beat Alabama if it's a shootout. Clemson versus, or my bad, I had Clemson lose. New Mexico versus Baylor. Let's look at this one. Obviously, we talked about some of these guys, Jamal Mashburn, but we're just going to scroll down here, and then we're going to look at this. New Mexico, obviously, they can put the ball in the basket. They have a solid defense. Same story with Baylor. It's just who is the better team when it's all said and done. I got to go with Baylor. I just think they got a little bit too much experience there to fail now. Dayton versus Arizona. Let's get to my Dayton Flyers, my dark horse team, to kind of make a run here in March Madness. This is going to be a tough guy to stop. Omar Balla, Caleb Love. They can even throw out Kylan Boswell at you. I mean, this team's going to be solid. They're going to be solid. And as much as I would love to give my Dayton Flyers, I don't even know why I'm calling them mine. I just kind of adopted them as a team that I really like this season. This isn't a good matchup for them. I'm not a Dayton fan. Obviously, I'm an Oregon and Illinois fan because I go to Oregon and I grew up in Champaign. But this one, I can't justify Dayton doing the job. Arizona, you're advancing. Then we get to Purdue versus TCU. Another matchup that I think could be a little bit of an upset alert. I mean, obviously, the game's going to go through Zach Edey with Purdue. That's kind of been their thing. Braden Smith can make some big shots. They got a lot of guys on there. Foster Loyer can make some big shots. Purdue got a lot of guys there on there that can really step it up. Jameer Nelson there. Emmanuel Miller there. TCU, they're going to have to score big. Will they do it? I don't know. Purdue, tough matchup. You're going to have to figure out a way to combat Edey. I don't see anybody on that TCU team stopping Zach Edey. I don't see it happening. Then we get to McNeese versus Kansas. Shahada Wells, you made it to the round of 32. Now you're playing up against a couple guys that I think are pretty dang good players that are going to be hard to stop. Hunter Dickinson, do you have an answer for him? Do you have an answer for McCullers? I don't know if you have those answers. With that being said, I'm going Hunter Dickinson and the Kansas Jayhawks. Then we get to Oregon versus Creighton. Like I said, this Creighton team, not a great matchup for a lot of teams. I think there's a lot of guys here that really create some problems. And as much as I'd love to say N'Faly Dante can continue his good run, and Jermaine Kuznar can get the job done, and maybe Jackson Shelstad pulls out some Peyton Pritchard-like heroics, I don't know if that's going to happen against Baylor Shireman, Trey Alexander, Ryan Kalkbrenner. They've just got guys there that are just really tough to game plan for. They got a lot of guys there with size, and that's something that Oregon doesn't necessarily have a plethora of on the bench. Creighton, they're going to get the job done. I'm sorry to do it to my team. I just don't see Creighton losing to us. I don't see it. Texas versus Tennessee. Shout out to my boy Cam once again. Dalton Connect versus Tennessee. Or my bad, Dalton Connect versus Texas. If it will load. Max Abmas, former big-time March Madness player at Oral Roberts, getting the job done. Dylan Dessou there. You got some guys there at Texas that can get the job done. A couple wins here. Baylor, big win. TCU, big win. But a lot of red, a lot of bad losses. Well, not necessarily bad losses, but losses against good teams. Tennessee, they're a good team. I hate to say it, but I don't see Texas getting the job done. Tennessee, Dalton Connect, they're going to be too much to handle. So what we're going to do here with the Sweet 16 is we're going to fill out this, and then we're actually going to go straight through this and get our Final Four straight. So we're going to go this side in our Final Four contender, this side, and then we'll go back to the bottom. And then we'll talk about just the Final Four. But we got UConn versus Auburn. I like this UConn team. I like this Auburn team. This is going to be a good game. This is going to be a good game. Don't get me wrong. But I'm kind of nervous about it because I think this is where I'm going to say UConn has their fault because my head is telling me UConn wins the whole thing. That's what my head's saying. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking they won it last year. They can't win it 2 years in a row. It's really hard to win it 2 years in a row. They're going to have a hiccup. What team can create a hiccup? Auburn. Auburn create that hiccup. They're a good team. They can get the job done. They're fourth in the BPI. They're a good team. Get the job done, Auburn, and you're advancing to the Elite Eight. Then we get to Washington State versus Illinois. Shout out to my Fighting Illini. Two teams that had pretty solid seasons. Washington State might be a little underranked. I'm not going to lie. I could have maybe made a case for a 5 or a 6 seed there. You're going to have to learn how to stop Miles Rice, Isaac Jones. This is a game, once again, I think a lot of Illinois' games in this tournament, if they even get to that many games, are going to be high scoring. You look at the Washington State, they can put up 74. It's pretty much around where Illinois gives up. I think this is another game that's going to be in the high 70s to mid 80s. And that might favor a team like Washington State, but ultimately I think Terrence Shannon, the way he's playing, he's going to go on a big March Madness run and get them to play Auburn, who Auburn is another team that is very, very dangerous. And you got to get this kid cooking if you're Illinois. Marcus Domask did not have the best of Big Ten tournaments. He had an okay Big Ten tournament, but not necessarily the best. You can get him going. It's going to be a big problem. It's going to be a big, big problem. Auburn has played similar teams like Tennessee. They've kind of both been a little battle-tested, been worn out. And I don't know if it's just a delusion in me. I'm picking Illinois to make it to the Final Four. I'm doing it. I'm not looking back. I'm doing it. Illinois is in the Final Four. Yep, that's who I have coming out. That's who I have coming out of the first side of the bracket. Yep. Probably going to regret it, but oh well. I'll probably regret it when they lose to BYU in the second round, but it is what it is. Houston versus JMU. Houston, like I said, very dangerous team. JMU is going to be a team that could make some noise here in March, but ultimately I can't justify them beating Houston. The Cinderella's over. It's over. I'm sorry. One of the 1 seeds got to make it, and it's going to be Houston. They're gonna make it past that. Marquette versus Kentucky. This is going to be a good game. Kentucky got some NBA guys to throw at you. Marquette, obviously, we talked about some of their guys, Cam Jones, Tyler Kolek. But I think this is the end of the road for Marquette. I think we see Kentucky get the job done. And Kentucky will be advancing. Oh, I did not mean to put them against Houston. Okay, Houston versus Kentucky. Well, we'll click into this. This is going to be one of those games. I think the pace slows down. And Kentucky's going to want to speed it up. They're going to want to speed it up. Can they speed it up? I don't think that. I saw Houston play last year against was it last year? No, 2 years ago against Illinois. They slowed them down. They can play their pace. They established their game. Houston's winning that game. They're winning that game. I'm sorry. Sorry, Kentucky, but they're winning that game, and there you have it. 2 Final Four representations off the top side of the bracket are Illinois and Houston. We get North Carolina versus Alabama. Alabama, like I said, they can get out, they can score. That's going to be what they need to do here against North Carolina. North Carolina, obviously, we talked about, they can score, they can defend a little. This is going to be a high-scoring affair. It's going to be back and forth. I don't like it, but I'm taking Alabama. They're a dangerous pick because if that offense don't flow, I don't think they're winning because I don't think they could stop anybody. But if that offense is cooking, they're winning the game. I think that's just kind of what we're looking at when it comes to Alabama. I think they're a team that, if the offense ain't cooking, they might be a sloppy team even in the first round. But if their offense is firing like I think it might, they can make a run. Baylor versus Arizona. We talked about that a little bit. Caleb Love, I think he's going to be a big factor in this game. But like I said, I was kind of debating whether or not Baylor would even get past New Mexico. I don't see them beating Arizona. I'm being honest. Arizona's just a better team in my opinion. I think Arizona beats them. Purdue versus Kansas. This is the matchup that I'm looking forward to here. Purdue, Zach Edey versus Hunter Dickinson. Obviously, we've seen that battle a few times with Hunter Dickinson at Michigan. Now we get to see it with him in a Kansas jersey. They got some firepower there at Kansas. Somebody got to stop Purdue. Obviously, Illinois was able to beat them, but I think they have to set with some losses here in March. And that being said, Kansas is getting the job done. Kansas coming out there and beating Purdue. And we got Creighton versus Tennessee. Tough draw here for my boy Cam. I think this Creighton team's good. I've said it multiple times. Baylor Sherman, Trey Alexander, Ryan Kalkbrenner. Dalton Knecht, is he enough? Is the supporting cast of him enough? I don't think so. I'm going Creighton. So there you have it. Creighton and Kansas and Alabama and Arizona. We'll talk about Alabama and Arizona first. I think Alabama, this is where their run ends. That high offense is going to be susceptible at some point. Arizona obviously can score a lot. So I think Arizona is going to be a team that can maybe defend a little bit better and end the season there for Alabama in the Elite Eight. Let me get Kansas versus Creighton. Like I said, Creighton, tough team, tough matchup. I think they're really good. I'm having them win here in the Elite Eight. There we have it. So our Final Four is set. Illinois, Arizona, Houston, Creighton. And we will see who goes to the finals on April 8th at Glendale, Arizona. But first, we have to talk about Illinois and Arizona. Illinois, Arizona. Obviously, Arizona, being in Glendale, has an advantage. They have an advantage. I don't know if you want me to say it, but they have an advantage. This is going to be a game that's going to be high scoring. It's going to be back and forth. It's going to be, can Omar Balla be stopped by Illinois? Can they get him in foul trouble? Can they stop Caleb Love? Can they stop Kylan Boswell, a former Illinois recruit? There's just a lot going on in this game for Illinois. But ultimately, I'm going to back in this video. I am backing my Fighting Illini. I'm doing it. I don't care what nobody says. I'm going to back them. I'm going to back them. Am I delusional? Maybe. But I'm backing my Fighting Illini. They're getting the job done. They're getting it done against Arizona. Creighton versus Houston. We have Houston against LJ Cryer. I mean, obviously they have LJ Cryer, my bad. But like I said, that slower pace, they're going to slow you down. I think they're going to break Creighton's kind of confidence and what Creighton was able to get into in this tournament. Creighton, obviously, I've been talking about how I think they got guys that they're going to throw at you and they're going to be able to get the ball in the basket and they're going to do all these wonderful things. Houston's a team that's going to break that. Houston's a team that's going to break that. Who else can step up on that team? Obviously, I named 3 guys that could step up, so it could be a team like Creighton that beats Houston. But I think Houston is going to the national championship. I think they will be in the national championship against Illinois, a rematch from 2 years ago when Houston knocked out Illinois. Don't remind me of what happened. Don't remind me of what happened. But this time, revenge season. Illinois, Houston, same 2 teams that happened 2 years ago. Slightly different situation. Slightly different situations here. You know that Houston's going to want to slow down Terrence Shannon. But you need Marcus Damas to come in and be that guy on offense. You got to get him in going. You're going to need Coleman Hawkins going. You got to get Dane Danger going. You got to get some of those freshmen off the bench. The Dre Gibbs Lawhorn. You got to get Nicola Moretti off the bench. You got to get Quincy Guerrier hitting some big shots. You got to get Luke Goody involved. Illinois is going to get their guys involved in this game. And Luke Goody is going to start making some shots. Terrence Shannon is going to go get 15, 20 points, somewhere around there. Coleman Hawkins is going to be playing the best defense of his life. And Illinois, at the end of it all, is going to be the national champions. Did I just talk myself into that? Absolutely. Is it going to happen? Probably not. But my Fighting Illini, the team I grew up watching, they're getting the job done. They're doing it. If anybody's doing it, why not us? There we have it. There we have it. Illinois is your March Madness champions.